check. Yes, that's me. Desktop audio. The things they did to OBS, where it's constantly changing what the input is for desktop audio, really annoying.
Yeah, fun, right?
I have to reset it every single time. Let's see, headphones. Okay. All right, guys, talk.
Test.
All right, cool. We're good. All right, yeah.
Everything looks to go on my side.
I think I might have already hit the button, so I can't even tell. Yeah, no, it's been recording this entire time, or we've been live this entire time chatting, and it's just been, yeah. Well, I mean, it didn't have your audio, but yeah, there's a separate button, but I'd already hit the button. So, welcome to it.
All right.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Steel Forum. My name is Nick Coffey. Today we're going to be talking about SDS2 in 2022, the Steel Conference, the American Steel Detailers Association, the NISD, and how disappointed we are with that in general, and in general our disappointment with life, steel detailing, and each other. So that's all it today. We hope you stick around. So and first, my disappointment is with friggin' Matthew here for not being able to figure out how to go live. So Matthew, welcome.
It's not Twitch. I don't use YouTube for that.
Yeah, you do Twitch frequently. You wanna shout out your Twitch quick?
Sure. Twitch.tv/Eremos_TTV. And that's every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday night starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yeah, and he takes that way more seriously than he does the Steel Forum, despite the great disparity in the number of subscribers between Eremos and the Steel Forum. But it's playing video games versus talking with me, so I can't really blame him.
Yeah, it's the only time I have for me.
It's me time. I spend my me time differently. What about you, Bondo? Do you spend your me time a little differently?
I spend my me time outside, if at all possible.
If at all possible, with your horses, right?
No, stop it.
What? No,
be my wife's horse.
Yeah, my understanding with the lore of horse girls is that marrying a girl who's into horses is a death sentence as far as your free time goes.
I am one of the lucky ones. See, there's horse people, and then there's people that have horses. Yeah. I'm married to a person that has a horse, so.
Yeah, I steered clear of that, but so we the Steel Conference was last week, and we missed it. We usually don't, but we missed it this time. But one of the things I wanted to talk about is they had this session again. How do you deal with offshore detailers, right? And it leads me into like just a whole set of rants, right? But first, right off the bat, right? The name of the session, How to Deal with Offshore Detailers, implies in and of itself that maybe this is not a great idea in the first place, right? That this is going to come with some hassles. And Matt, you've sent letters before, right? Like annoyed letters.
Oh yeah, was to Joel, who at the time I believe was the head of the NISD, and also I believe Charlie
Carter.
Yes, Charlie Carter of the AISC, and the official AISC response is NISD is not our problem. Take it up with them.
Right.
We're not touching that. And the NISD's response was, well, detailers are cheap and don't want to sign up, so these guys are willing to pay the bills, and we'll do what they say, I guess.
I'm going to let you weigh in, Jason, before I start ranting, because it's just I lose my mind, right? It drives me bonkers.
Me too. I don't want to do something I shouldn't do on YouTube, so I try to keep my mouth shut. But it is absolutely infuriating that an organization with its roots set in America is, for all intents and purposes, promoting the use of offshore detailing,
Right.
promoting the use of substandard, in many cases, substandard work.
Right. And that's the thing. Just by having the session, right, and
Yes.
naming it that, you are declaring that you are giving up things, right? You are going to have to struggle to deal with these people, right? To deal with these offshore agencies, right? And it's not the individuals. I have nothing against the individual Indian detailer, Filipino, Chinese, Russian, whatever else. No problem whatsoever. But the companies, right, they are historically and demonstrably poorly run, and not run with the best interests of their customers in mind. We've all seen it, right? Like, all of us have worked for fabricators and have had to deal with offshore detailing, right? And it's not the detailer we hate, it's the company, it's the organization.
Right. Well, because you wind up with a different, I want to say lack of, but I'll stick with different set of standards. You've got language barriers. You've got different standards as far as engineering requirements, building codes, and whatnot. It's just there's a lot that gets in the way, and then you've got to deal with the various softwares that are involved. Lack of formal training, things like that. I wouldn't pretend to know how to go deal with concrete,
Right.
but you get people that don't have experience, and I mean this is where it kind of got started. Was you had people with no experience but willing to do it for next to nothing, and all the fabricator hears is next to nothing, eh? Ooh, that sounds good. And I mean there are whole detailing companies that have made their living on cleanup hitting for this. Okay, these guys got the job to halfway, it fell down, and now you're going to pay me to come in and finish it up. And the total there winds up being more than what it would have been to have it done right the first time. But the fabricator or the GC, whoever it is, involved, they're just tied up on, well, that first price was the best price, and so that's where I want to be.
It does them no good, though, if that's the only price that they put in their quote and have to bear this cost on their own afterwards to fix everything.
Right.
I mean,
and that's such an important point, right? And like I really hope they hit on it in the session is, listen, you can take this bid, right? But you have to add to it and add to it and add to it, right? Mm-hmm. And then at the end of all those things, you've got to worry about the quality, right? And the impression that you're leaving on all the people downstream of you, the people who are your customers, right? Who are seeing your name. Your name is on that title block, Mr. Fabricator, right? Not my name. Your name is on that title block. And
I've got a little bit of a soft spot for fabricators because that's where I came from, and I was involved in the bidding and all that kind of thing. And I reviewed hundreds of bids, and many times we were within, less than $1,000 of our nearest competitors. And so as small of an amount that detailing is to the contract, yeah, it can have an effect. But at the time I was there anyway, we kept all detailing within the U.S. And I mean, you just had to. I mean, we tried a couple of times. We had one project manager that brought an overseas detailer with him, and we tried it a few times, and the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. It just wasn't, because we would spend so much more time from a project management standpoint dealing with it. And not just that, but you've got the time differences. Well, okay, now if the shop has a question, that steel beam is going to be sitting on a set of horses or have to get moved or whatever, and that costs money for however long, 8 hours until that detailer happens to be awake.
And there's two sides to this discussion too, right? Because when I start to consider, right, the offshore and I want to forgive them, right, for having new people, for having training, right? They can't help that there's a language barrier. They can't help that the time is different. But there is an insidiousness, too, to one of their biggest habits that I think people don't talk about enough, which is, hey, project number 1 through 3, we're going to put our A team on, right? You're going to get the best detailing that we have to offer. And then project 4 and 5 and 6, you start to get the B team and then the C team, right? And you don't know that, right? You've vetted these people, right? These detailers, and then you start to rely on them. You start to say, okay, I can rely on this to be at least approval worthy. I can send it in. And then you get this 4th or 5th project, and it's, I mean, garbage, like really, 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 really bad. Like, and I mean, you've seen that happen, right? Like, or heard tell of it.
Yep. The other thing that you come into is that they can come in with some really attractive schedules, really attractive, because they're going to throw 1,000 people at it. You know, not 1,000, but
Right.
more people than we can, right?
Yeah.
The problem with that is, and you guys all know this, there comes a point where you can only throw so many people at it before you end up doing more management in communication than you do detailing. I mean, there is a point of no return there. Or point of diminishing return, I should say.
And, you know, project managers, I can't remember quite the quip, but it's project managers are convinced that if one guy can do it in 1,000 days, 1,000 guys can do it in 1 day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just not the case. We just went through it on a big project, big warehouse project, where it's like, okay, we've got to meet this schedule, and then it's connection design and RFIs, right? And RFI 1's response necessitates RFI 2. And you cannot, no matter how many man hours you throw into it in those first couple weeks, there's nothing you can do. You cannot anticipate. Oh, it used to drive me crazy. Our old checker, right, used to say to us, oh, you have to study the drawings and find all of the problems before you start drawing.
Yep.
Yep.
Right. Mysteriously, he was never able to accomplish this himself.
No.
Right. But, find all, and it's like, no, until I do the math and realize that, the K distance with that isn't compatible with the connection they've selected, I can't anticipate that, right? I have no idea until I'm looking at that piece, right? I can spot some of them, right? I'll make sure that the grids add up and all of that stuff. And, if there's a 24 framing into a 12, I'll ring that one up right away. But there's so much more beyond that it's like, no, I just can't. But
the owner
until you lay out the geometry, you realize, oh, well, based on the skew and the angle, the slope that this is framing in, I won't be able to get the number of bolts. But, when it's all flat on a plan, it looks like it'll all fit up.
Right.
The owner of a previous employer came downstairs one day. He said, Bondo, I got this great idea. He says, I want you to take this job and just go through and write all the RFIs right up front. Oh. Just do it all right in the beginning, because then we're not going to be slowed down by RFIs later. Hey,
right.
No, really? What a great idea. You're kidding me.
I'm going to issue an RFI right now that says, hey, it turns out they didn't put the anchor bolts in the right place. I'm not sure which way they're wrong, but I'm sure they're going to be wrong. What would you like me to do? I don't know. And we see it time and time again, even with experienced project managers who should and do, and that's the annoying part, they do know better, right? In their heart of hearts, they realize that what they're asking for is impossible. But at bid time, they're the most optimistic people in the world. Right? Like, oh, this is going to be a dream. It's going to go so easily. Let's. And the classic optimism is, oh, it's one beam that repeats 250 times. No, it is not.
It's the same truss all the way throughout the building.
Oh, stair towers are the worst. Oh, it's just one.
towers.
It's just once. Then you get the field dimensions, and everyone you start adding treads in. It's not off by a half an inch. It's off by enough that you've got to put a whole other freaking riser in there. It's like,
Yeah, you get those field dimensions. You're like, I got to go out and see this because the wall has to jerk back and forth all the way up.
They do.
What the hell is going on here?
Yeah. We imagine these buildings and we model them to be perfect, right? It'd be great if modeling software had a realism mode where the freaking masonry went like this on its way up. And every time you reopen the model, it just jiggles that a little bit. So it's like, it doesn't fit now. Why doesn't it fit? Because you didn't anticipate the fact that masonry isn't actually straight. You've got to accept that.
Well, perhaps we should just get rid of masonry and install giant 3D printers on the site to 3D print the masonry.
That would be nice. I've seen those, and I'm still convinced if a mason is the person running it, they're going to set it up 2 inches in the wrong direction. Right? It'll have a scaling factor, and just be like it'll be off. It won't even be off consistently. Like that. Oh, we got to talk about what was the name of that job where they did a survey, but they didn't actually tie the survey to the building, to the grid lines. Yes. What was the name? What was that project? It doesn't matter what the project name was.
It was Varner Hall.
Yeah. So we get this job, and they send us a survey. Well, we take the survey and we plop it onto our model, right? And okay, we need to relay out the bed plate to match up with this existing building. So we do. We send in all the RFIs. Hey, here's what we think we have to do to adjust it, right? And we get done. We throw 40, 50 man hours into doing this. And then we get a call from the customer, and they said, well, the engineer took that survey and they rotated it a little bit, and then it fits all better. Can you do...
It was like half a degree, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
I think 0.7, right? 0.7 degrees?
Yep.
0.7 degrees. That's how you can tell you've had trauma, because it's etched.
You pull the obscure numbers out of your
head, right? So it's can you rotate it, redo it? It's like, yes, I can, right? But somebody should have told me that the rotation of this survey was not a given, and that it might need to be rotated a little bit. Like you gave us a CAD file of a survey, we went bloop and put it on the new one, right?
And it was close. We made it fit.
Right. And it was even worse because there wasn't a tie-in point somewhere else that we could have noticed that by rotating this, everything fits in better. It wasn't relative.
It was just the outline of the wall, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Outline of existing walls and no reference points whatsoever.
Right. So then they tied it to 1 point, and they should have tied it to 2 points, but they tied it to 1 point, and it was disastrous. And it's like every time we get like 3-4 times a year, we need to revise our contract terms to deal with some situation that has come up that we need to protect ourselves from in the future.
Yeah, our contract used to fit on one page. And that whole second page is just one line at a time, a thing that we've added of the next time this comes up. And it has protected us going forward on those things too.
I was watching a TikTok, and some woman, she does, I don't remember. It's house cleaning, right? But she runs into the same problem where people, the invoice is due. You're saying, hey, you're past due on the invoice, and they're like, oh, well, I didn't like the work. And it's like, nope, invoice is past due. Your time for, complaint is over, which is a line in our contract that once the invoice is past due, all back charges, all holds, you don't get any of that stuff, right? If on day one you get that invoice and you say, whoa, right? There's stuff we need to discuss. All right, fine. We'll discuss it within our contract limitations, right? I'm gonna get my money if I deserve my money, right? But once that invoice is past due, that is not your time to be like, oh, well, I need to discuss it. No, discussion time is over. It is now.
Especially when you're talking about an invoice that's now 2 months past due.
Right.
And we're starting to get aggressive. Okay, I've asked you several times very nicely, where's my money? The moment that I say, here's your notice of intent to file lien, oh, well, there were problems on the job. Really? The job's been standing for a couple of months now.
Yeah, there's about to be more problems on the job
Yeah.
because
I'll just go ahead and file that lien now.
Right. Notice of intent is coming in hot right now. We're gonna be filing our lien. But the contract thing makes me think. So we've got the Discord server, which the link should be down there in the show notes. We encourage you to join. It's a great resource, whether it's just to complain, right? You need help in SDS2, you need, an engineer in a different state than you're normally working, whatever, right? All that stuff is there. So join the Discord, great resource. But another thing that's come out of it, well, actually, with a Facebook group too, there's a Steel Detailers Facebook group here, apparently, is a group of us have started meeting to talk about, okay, the NISD has clearly abandoned American detailing, right? Like it's not something.
Well, their argument is it's National Institute of Steel Detailing. Doesn't say which nation.
Right.
That was just about verbatim what I was told.
Right.
Jesus.
And but not only that, right? They have not produced useful stuff in a really, really long time, right? Like we still have the Blue Detailing book, which is what I started learning from, right, in 2001, 2002, right? That's the book that I went to. That book is so out of date, right? It doesn't even address 3D modeling and the dimensions and stuff that comes out of there. There's so much in the modern construction environment that detailers need to know and deal with every day that they're not helping. So we're trying to. There's a group of us trying to get together and talk about, all right, let's talk about. We'll build a website, right? We'll get, just let's start having discussions as an American Steel Detailers Association. Right, and we even discussed that, right? Is that North American? Is that? And we're like, let's just keep this simple, right? Just American Steel Detailers. I think most people get it, right? And what's our goal? But all the stuff that we wish the NISD would do, right? Position statements and advocacy and helping other detailers and providing detailers with resources like here's some sample contract language. Here's, a discussion of a back charge and why it was garbage, right? And what a fabricator should be able to expect and what they shouldn't be able to expect, what's reasonable. All of that stuff. So it's, and yeah, it's definitely, it takes some gall, right? Because the problem with all of this is always, well, who are you, right? What makes you, and it's like somebody has to step forward and just raise their hand at some point. So there's a group of us. We would love if drop us an email if you want to join in. It is for American Steel Detailers only. That's the requirement, and there's a lot of reasons for that we've discussed previously. But there's separate goals, and I think they're important.
So how do we get involved in that? I knew there was talk about it. I didn't know we were getting going now.
Yeah, so it was actually in the Discord. There was some discussion of an invite over there. But if you want an invite, either reach out on the Discord or just send us an email, and I'll get you an invite. There's a guy who's basically handling all of the meeting scheduling right now. So, and I think it's something. The first resource that we're looking to put together is just a list, right? Here's a list of American steel detailers and detailing organizations, right? With the requirement being you actually have to be American, right? Based in America, right? And that's it. And
now, what about an American-based country or company that uses an offshore night shift, so they're out too?
Yep. All of your detailers, right, have to be domestic. And we discussed the line and we kind of agreed that's where we're, and that's the thing, there's a lot of discussions, a lot of options. Eventually you need to decide, and if you want to be in the room and make those decisions, join the room, right? Be a part of it.
Absolutely. Cool. Hey, little bit off topic, but I'm kind of happy about this, and I know a lot of detailers like to pride themselves on building supercomputers these days. But graphics cards seems like those LHRs are becoming available, and you can actually get a graphics card that's not being snapped up by miners.
I mean, we're still talking four figures, right?
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, I haven't seen any of the original cards. Like if we're talking an RTX 3080.
Yeah.
Like the Founders Edition of that was $700. The ones that you can lay hands on now have more memory than that. They're a little bit improved over what that was. And I think that original one is still probably being produced, but it's not an LHR. And so those are the ones that are still being instantaneously snapped up by Bitcoin miners with all their bots to, scour all the websites to,
well,
scoop
and
them up and
you
scalp
said
them.
it's off topic. I'm going to double down on that and say, listen, if you're building a new computer, if you're using that just for detailing, right, for specifically SDS2 detailing, a 900 level card, a 960 series, is more than enough to run the stuff that SDS2 can handle. Outside of that, you are way better off spending your money in other categories, particularly, and we've done a lot of testing, clock speed, most important thing you can do. Behind that, you need a fast processor, or that is, I just said fast, a fast hard drive, and good memory. And then behind all of those things, you start to get into video card. But it's after that, you've pretty much built the rest of the computer.
Right. And really for video card, it's, how many monitors do you want to handle at what resolution?
Yeah.
That's where you're starting to look at what kind of card do I want. It doesn't have anything to do really with the software you're trying to run, not for detailing.
Right.
But if you want to run 3, 4, 4Ks, you're going to need a more serious card.
Yeah.
But you want to run a handful of 1080Ps, an older card will work just fine, and you can find those.
Yep. And
to some extent.
Yeah, to some extent. And that's, I wish they continued to make them. I don't know if they do, but
they don't. It's
yeah.
You're talking eBay, Craigslist, buying them used, basically.
It's funny too, because for gamers, right, and it's the new equivalent of what sports cars used to be, right? Like this is what you're flexing now. It's not right. What do you drive? You'll drive around in a freaking Toyota Camry and be happy with it, especially with $5 a gallon gas prices. But you got to have a souped up video card in your gaming system at home.
Oh yeah. Well, in the RGB stuff,
Oh, yeah.
a tower used to be entirely dark and sealed, and there were fans, and that was it. And now I have this glowing system, and I'm colorblind. Like, this is lost on me. But this thing is just radiating colors over there. I could see all my memory cards and the processor and my keyboard and mouse are all lit up. It's like, yeah, it's on. I can't tell what color it is at the moment.
Yeah,
Nope.
mine's
I
the same
refuse.
story. I did not want or choose any RGB stuff, but it all came
That's what it was.
right. You buy a gaming motherboard and you get RGB just included now, and it's
Yep.
all right. Neat.
That's funny. My father and his generation, they had he would go through all these classic cars, and he had all these parts. He had, I've got the transmission out of a 57 Chevy, and I've got the bulletproof bell housing for that 69 whatever. He would have all of these little oddball parts. And at the time I was like, why on earth do you have all of these? That's weird. They're not interchangeable exactly.
Right. Now you understand.
But I possess a bin right next to me with SATA cables and Molex and all kind, Cat 5, Cat 6, all kinds of patch cables. It's just a bin of cables, parts, fans, just guts of computers, basically. It's like, I get it. You never know.
Well,
Sometimes.
So we just started a new Unite 3D cloud customer, right? Mm-hmm. And in the initial conversations with them, right, like they've done the thing that a lot of detailers are doing, and they just built computers and have them sitting in their office and people are just remoting into them, right?
Yep.
Which
And we did that at one point.
right, but it taps out real quick. But I could immediately tell, right? Like the moment he turned his camera on, I could see into his office and just see all of that. Like there's a box of fans over there. There's an empty box from a video card, right? Like there's just those little piles of computer things around. Yeah, I mean, you can't see mine because I work in my living room, right? So I have to keep it, somewhat presentable. But in my basement, I just have boxes of cables and video cards and all of this stuff just sitting there from when we used to build these, and we don't anymore, right? Because all of our computing is done in the cloud. We don't build those machines anymore to that same degree. We still build pretty good machines, but it's not.
No, not for nothing, but I think a lot of detailers that do build their own machines have missed their real calling of just building computers and selling them to people. Like, why are we doing this? Why are we dealing with all of this headache and being yelled at? I could assemble a bunch of parts and just, here you go,
as a
money.
detailer really want to go down the rabbit hole of why are we doing this? I mean,
it involves alcohol.
It really goes off the rails pretty quick. Which brings me to SDS2 2022. Which
that's your segue, huh?
Yeah, that's my why are we doing this, right? Because we upgraded, right? I started using 2022. I did a demo lately with Zabka, and honestly, it's good, right? Like there's good stuff in there, and the annoying part, right, is that we really wanted dark mode, and dark mode looks awesome, right? And then we wanted an interface design, right? The interface needed to be caught up to 2022, right? And they've taken steps, but now we're in that phase of where the hell is that button, right? And I'm trying to figure out how to do this thing. And 2021, you should just not use lightning mode in it, right? Because they didn't. All of the customization that you needed just wasn't in there. Right. It got better in the I release, but the 2021, the initial, it's like, this is what you get. So in 2022, when you do have a material selected, you can fix this is what my toolbar looks like when I have material selected.
Yeah, you can adjust the contextual menus to your will.
Right. My biggest I don't know. I'm frequently annoyed by varying degrees, but one of my annoyances, right, is they took that status window and they stuck it in the bottom left corner of the screen.
And the mouse binding.
And the mouse binding. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
And you just can't see it there, right? So a lot of times you'll accidentally enter a command, and it's trying to get input from you. It's like, hey, I'm waiting for your input, and you're just slamming on your mouse. Do something, right?
It's just sitting there. Select member.
Right. It's just waiting for your input, and you don't know that it's there waiting for your input. And I talked to Zabka about it, and he's like, yeah, well, that's where that is for other softwares, right? Like they've got that status window, and I was like, they don't really have that. Like, I don't know other softwares that really have that status window like that.
But no. It'll be okay. AutoCAD, the newer versions of AutoCAD, no, it's on a widget that follows your mouse all the way around.
That's exactly.
It's not locked anywhere.
I was like, no, just put it right there.
And furthermore, why would you take something that was adjustable in the previous release? It was a decoration.
Right.
You could move it anywhere you want.
Right.
Why would you change that?
Right. Well, and one of the other things that drove me crazy about it was the Z filter, right? That little checkbox, right? Because I'm paranoid. I am terrified that I'm going to be doing work with that Z filter turned off, and I'm going to spin my model, and all of a sudden it's going to be this blown up thing because I've been
one of those optical illusions where you only see it look right if you're in the right plane.
Yeah, I've been moving members in the Z dimension.
See, you guys ruined me. Up until 3 years ago, I never used the Z filter.
Yeah, you didn't even know it existed.
I didn't. I used exact points and vertex points and laid out construction lines for every single little move.
Right.
Now you live that auto point life.
Yeah, I just found out when I was talking with Zabka what the thing was that I had no idea that control middle click would take you to the surface of a freaking material. I had no idea. I always typed the surface command. Always.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I always have to do is create a surface command. I need to make that something. And I'm still struggling trying to like convince myself, stop typing the command that you do for that. You can just click it now. It's just a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just control center click. I'm trying to will myself to learn the new way, but it's not even new. It's old, right? It's been there for a long time.
Yeah, it's been since at least 7.0.
Right.
New to me.
But that's like the classic SDS2 thing. They add this feature, and it's great, but nobody knows that it happened, right? Until like something like this comes up, or they announce it in a webinar that was 45 minutes and 43 minutes of it was stuff you don't.
See, I tend to use modes quite a bit, like whether it's the material fit mode or the member isolate mode or whatever the case. So I'm used to hitting Control Shift to get my, to get the desired commands.
Yeah, I loved though. Like I wanted to watch. I watched the What's New in 2022 webinar, and they're hilarious, right? Because and it was the same thing with their ill-fated podcast, because it's like when teachers did a skit in high school and you could feel like the salesy fakeness of the whole thing. Like I'm watching this webinar and it's like, what happens if I do this thing? Oh, great question. In that case, what you would do. Right.
I'm glad you asked.
I'm glad you asked. And the whole room, you could just feel them groaning. But
and anybody that's operated SDS for any amount of time knows damn well that they have had to suss out that specific instance to make sure it works beforehand. Because I'm going to tell you what, in 90% of the other instances that are similar, it's not going to work as seamlessly.
Yeah. The two greatest parts of SDS2, right? The first one is 2022. The first one's the licensing, bar none, right?
Yes, that is amazing.
It makes the software actually more valuable. Right, we can use it more readily, and it's great. Right, my licenses become much more valuable to me. But
don't say that; they'll increase maintenance fees.
Yeah, please, like we can stop them. But we talked about this amongst us. How do you miss the fact that sometimes somebody pulls a freaking license that shouldn't have, or leaves their license running, and I need to be able to get that license back?
Yep.
Right? They do not have a button for that, and that's the only button I need in the license administrator, right? Is hey, this guy's using a license, take that license away from them. They left for lunch.
Jason went to lunch, boot him.
Right. Right. And they've got a button that says kind of that, right? It's like, oh, take this away. But it's forever.
It's the nuclear option.
Right.
Jason's fired. I don't ever want him getting back in.
That's the only button that's there is don't ever...
I mean, at least they thought of a nuclear option, because that is important to have, but it's not used nearly as much.
But presumably, and I'm mad at the users group, right? The SDS2 user, presumably this was tested through the user. How did none of them go like, hey, where's this button? Like, where's this really obvious button that I'm going to need? Like, when is that going to be there?
Come on, Nick. Now you're coming full circle to the right all the RFIs at the beginning, or, thing right
Yeah,
now.
exactly.
They got to test it. I assume they got to test it, right? They got to go like, hey, this is great. This is awesome, but it seems like you're missing this one fairly obvious thing to do.
See, you know what you got to do? You got to sign up to be a tester for the next time around.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about that before, but so, well, and that's I've talked with a whole bunch of SDS2 users, and we're trying to figure out like there's something that the community is now lacking that it used to have. The SDS2 community as a whole used to be more active and engaged than it is now, right? Somewhere, I want to say 2008 to 2012, right, was peak to me, right? That felt like peak SDS2 community time, where people were, it was lively. People were constantly talking and helping each other, all of that stuff. What happened between that and where we are now?
I don't know. I think collaboration as a whole has gone down. Not just within SDS, but in the world. That we're more ingrained about competing against each other than we are collaborating and having a better outcome for the community. So I mean that's what I think is going on. But you're right. There is a sense of community and helpfulness that just seems to be waning for sure.
What's interesting though is we went to the last user group conference or whatever summit, whatever they call it now.
Yeah.
And that feeling is still there. Like everybody's still buddy. Everyone's still talking and sharing their stories. And how do you get around this? How do you do this? I mean, we talk shop for days.
Right. Which is what always, I really think like people will jump on the Discord and they'll chat, they'll talk with each other, all of that stuff. And, and we're getting there, right? Like we're making progress, but it's this slow clawing progress, right? With getting people to talk to each other a little bit more. And I don't like,
and part of it might be because we're so inundated with different communication channels. I'm not saying for steel detailing in particular, but everybody's got a Facebook now. Well, hell, I may have only heard of Discord in passing before you brought it up. I just installed it within the last few months because I heard of it, but I had no reason to be on there. And there's probably hundreds of other options that we could go with.
Well, and I just like, and that's part of why I'm excited about the ASDA anyways, right? Is there's stuff that we don't have to compete on, that we can work together on, that I think we all do better by providing these. He's like, yeah, I'm going to compete on, but what I compete on isn't cutting the other guy out, right? I want to be better than them.
Yeah.
Right. Like I want to train my people better, treat them better, right? Like all of that stuff. And in the end,
you'd rather win by value add rather than winning by exclusion.
Right. And there are plenty of detailers, or there is plenty of work for the actual set of detailers within this country specifically that we could all feast, right? We could all do plenty well and be on our way. So I don't know. It's just like I feel like the rising tide raises all boats thing is important. But I don't know. Sometimes
one thing I'd love to see come out of it is a great reference resource. I've toyed with putting some of the stuff together myself. I even started some of it myself. Just simple things like concrete anchors.
Yeah.
What is the equivalent Hilti Titan versus Powers bolt or Simpson bolt or whatever, all the different brands, they all have a different name for it, but they're all screw anchors, right?
Right. They've got a strength value, right? So what is it? You can provide a simple spreadsheet that
exactly.
Yeah. Hilti this is equivalent to Powers this is equivalent to Titan that.
Right. And it's just, that's one tiny little resource that could be really helpful.
Right.
There's a myriad of other things that we could really put together.
But SDS2 as a company, and I'm sure it's the same for other detailing companies, they have to bear some responsibility for this, right? Because they've got the large audience, right? And templates is a great example of them doing it the wrong way, right? They're creating a template that would be useful, right, to their entire user base, but they're giving it to that one person. And then they're charging again to give that same template to somebody else, right? That template might be worth it to me, right? If I knew it existed, I might even pay for it. I might give you the money and gratitude for that template, right? But and stuff beyond that. They should have a hosted website where you can upload a model to share with people, right? And say, hey, I created a quick bolt model, right? Here's a part for that, or an RB Wagner bracket, or whatever else. And their software gets more valuable because there's that resource there, right? But they need to invest in their community. They're the only people that it makes financial sense for them to do it.
Right.
Well, and I think to some extent you're kind of talking about their toolbox, because that's where you've got like Bruce Vaughn's tool collection and some of the toys that they've got in there. But I think that it would need to be developed more. Like that could be a place for it.
Or the part library. You know, the part library was
part library.
You know.
But the toolbox is kind of a great example of doing it wrong, right? Because all of that code is obfuscated. I can't make it better. I can't change it and then give it back and say, here, I changed this in
it should be open source.
A couple ways.
Yeah.
Here it is, right? Like an open source community. And again, in the past, we had Beimer actively contributing to parametric threads. Hey, how do I, I've got this, I'm working on this parametric, and it was collaborative, and people would say, oh, try this, right? But we hit a point now, right, where nobody in the community knows, and we need somebody from SDS2, right, to weigh in and say, here's how you move this problem forward. Right. And again, they would have to invest in that, and they're not. And
I guess it's their right to do so, but things like the handrail member, I guess it's a plugin. They apparently, and I haven't tested it yet in 2022, but apparently they fixed the problem with pickets when you have a railing that continues over a breakover on a stringer.
Yep.
So the pickets are correctly spaced instead of it imagining there should be a post at the break. Well, that problem would have been solved years ago by McKinnon or somebody smarter than me, if that code was open, and they wouldn't have had to invest any time in it. Of course, that does open up, possibilities for other things to be mismanaged if it's solely managed by the community. But I guess that's the risk you take. I don't know.
Well, but you can't have it both ways. You can't.
No.
Not invest in the community and not produce these tools regularly.
Right.
Like, I mean, if you want to have a programmer who's writing parametrics all the time, that's great, right? But you should see a couple, a quarter, 5, 6, right? A parametric doesn't but take a good one, but 2 or 3 days of real active programming. And if you know the code, it's not even close to that much time.
Sure.
And I would love to start seeing that kind of investment back in the software and into the community, right? Like, crowdsourcing is the revolution of the 21st century, right? Like open source, all of that stuff. It makes a huge difference in softwares, but I don't know. It feels like they went the other way.
Yeah.
I need water.
And in access to more parametrics and components, that kind of sharing. I mean, we've had Bruce for years. We've taken him for granted, basically.
Yeah.
And I mean, you try to write something, and if you can't figure it out, ask Bruce. And I remember a parametric a long time ago when I was just trying to start learning how to use the API. One line of code at a time, I got him to write me that parametric. Okay, I did this, but it doesn't work. What's next? All right, I did this, but it doesn't work. What's next? And just line by line, we worked through it, and he didn't even charge me anything. He would have been well within his rights, and I would have paid handsomely for it and not have to deal with it. But we need some kind of ability to do that sort of work where we can get more components and parametrics, because that's really the speed of it. The software, the underlying engine is one thing, but to have that ability to put in what you want, to get it to calculate this complex situation, or put in this 100 members that's on this pattern that's repeatable, anywhere that something is repeatable, we need a parametric for that. And the ones that come with it are great, but we definitely could use more. And every now and then, whenever we get slow, that's something that we always do is, all right, we're going to peel off 1 or 2 guys, sit down and write a bunch of parametrics. But the problem is, that's not their bread and butter. That's not their career. These guys have a background in programming. They are not full-time programmers. So when Tom or myself or you, Nick, we sit down, it's, okay, first I have to dig into how the hell do you write parametrics again? Right. I don't remember the API. I don't remember what I have to import. So I have to pour through all of this poorly documented API to try to figure out what the hell does this do in the first place. And then as I begin to piece it together, and I'm just on the cusp of, all right, I could sit down and write some parametrics. Big job comes in. Guess what? Start modeling. Oh, I don't have time. I will never get this parametric written.
And the thing is that there, I mean, you're starting to hit the nail on the head. Is that it can't just be a programmer, and it can't just be a detailer. There needs to be intense collaboration between the two. The programmer can write the parametric rather quickly, far quicker than the detailer can, but he can't make anything useful without the detailer.
Right. And if anything, they're going to overcomplicate what could be simple. Right. There are a lot of parametrics that are amazing that I use all of the time that the code isn't but 30 lines for. Right. Yeah. But I cannot accomplish that same. The one I always go back to, right, is the one that creates a parametric that puts in construction lines with the points that you just picked. And you're looking in one plane, you pick the points, then you switch your view to the other plane, and it puts those same points back in for you, right? And that's a very, very simple parametric, but it is invaluable when you're working, for instance, on a Hip and Valley project. Mm-hmm. You just can't you can't get that same information without it. And not only does the community need to be active, but like they've got a YouTube channel, right? Like here's a parametric, let's highlight it, let's talk about it, right? In a 5-minute video that's I don't know, but there's not enough SDS2 support people who are detailers, right? I don't know if there are any. I know there are SDS2 people who used to be detailers. So, I don't know. Right. It feels like they couldn't possibly even know what the tweaks are. So it falls to somebody like us to just be like, oh, I guess we'll spend the time. And if you look at how infrequently we're able to post videos, it's a good indication of how much you can get without investment, right? And we still spend money, right? A not inconsiderable portion of money on this channel, right? With the idea that we're gonna get some of it back through I guess street cred is the best way to do it, right? By just putting ourselves in front of people, right? But that only gets you so much, right? Versus somebody who could really be inside SDS2, know what's going on, know what those problems are, or what code is going to work. Like there should be a person at SDS2 you could call with a question about a parametric. To my knowledge, that person does not exist.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. Is Beimer even still there? I haven't.
I believe they are based on just intuition, right?
They've locked him in a dungeon somewhere
that I've had, but I don't like. They're not, and because Beimer was fantastic, right? That putting his skills to other usage made sense, right? But okay, great. Replace them with somebody. And
I think that's the difficulty is you needed 10 more of him, 100 more of him really. And you got to find them, you got to make them because you've got to not only know programming, but you've got to know this software and all of its, API and ins and outs.
And my favorite feature of 2022, right, is one that's undocumented, is that you can now assign keyboard shortcuts to direct parametrics, right? So, you type in a keyboard command and it gets you that parametric. And why it's undervalued, right, is that I'm going to start replacing built-in commands with parametrics that do it the way that I want to do it, right? And that give me a little bit more power on the back end, right? And I am confident with the work that Beimer did in exposing some of that code that there is a lot of power there. Rubber banding and some visual elements on the screen that I think should be there, right? All of that stuff exists somewhere in the parametric code. I have no idea how to get to it, right?
Right.
So, I'll hack something together that works for me. But improving the community, if you want the community to improve your software, which they very much do, you need to invest in that community. But that's my soapbox.
I mean, it's kind of akin to, and I see this with video games a lot. Like, anyone that knows Skyrim mods, people absolutely love to mod the bejesus out of games.
Yes.
And it's open access. Anyone can get in and do it. All you need to do is have the, programming know-how, but that's the only real hurdle that you've got. Other than that, go for it. Whatever you want to do it. And it's shareable. There's a whole community built around it.
Well, and when you think of it from an investment standpoint, right, there's, if you've ever watched The Office, it's way cheaper to keep a customer than it is to land a new customer. And
Right.
putting people in a community where they feel like they have friends, right? Oh, I know James McKinnon. I know Bruce. I know Jason, right?
Yep.
Those people who are invested in that community are going to be much harder to peel off to go use a competing software. And when people ask them what software you should use, they're not going to question it. They're going to say this. They've got the best support. They've got the best community. All of that stuff.
Yep.
And it would make great sense for them, and financially, it's a no-brainer. They're clearly not spending the money on their friggin' support department. The individual
you can raise them on chat whenever you want.
Yeah, the individual support reps are great, right? It's not it is not an employee problem, right? Ours has been fantastic, right? But they're moving to this model, and we've seen it with cloud users of, okay, your license is stored in the cloud. It is no less aggressive, though, about kicking you out if it thinks you don't have a license. And if that happens outside of their support hours, you are screwed. They need to have somebody there 24 hours a day picking up the phone. Somebody, right? And I'm not saying make your existing workforce work longer, right? But there's too much money on the line, right, for that to be a problem. I cannot sit down at my computer on deadline evening when I was planning to work through the night to get this job out and then have my license not launch and be completely helpless to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because your customer is not going to accept that as an answer from you.
Right. They're not. I can't. Yep. Just, nope. So there needs to be an emergency number, something. Right? We need some, and we pay for it, right? Like this support is not cheap, right? We are thousands and thousands of dollars every year for this support, and that's a reasonable expectation, is to be able to use your software whenever you need to, right? And to be able to reach somebody to tell you what's wrong with it.
Right. Nights, weekends, whatever you've got to do, there needs to be somebody there that can answer.
Right. And I don't even mind if the initiation is chat and it takes 5-10 minutes. They've got somebody with a cell phone at their house. Yeah. That person is on call, right? That's a reasonable solution, right?
And put restrictions on it too, where you have to be out. Not the normal support.
Right.
Hey, this doesn't work.
Right. It's not where's the member add button.
Right. It's strictly,
it can't be requesting a how-to.
use...
It has to be, this is broken.
Right.
Yeah, I cannot use my license. SDS will not open.
Yeah, I would totally understand that, but it's got to be something. We're paying enough for it, right? And at this point, honestly, I don't know about you two, but I've given up on even trying to call. Right, every time I need to talk to chat or talk to support, I send a chat message and wait for somebody to respond, because you can't just call.
I spent way too long in the early part of this decade, or the decade previous to this one, memorizing that phone number not to try. Now I am pulling up the support screen at the same time that I'm dialing, but
yeah.
So you try chat and you try a call at the same time?
Yeah. I know that they're not going to answer the phone.
I was going to say, do you ever get through with the phone?
No, not for the last several years. I mean, at least 3+ years.
I don't expect an answer on the first ring, right? But
No,
put me on hold, right? I'll wait. Not
Yeah,
patiently,
absolutely.
but I'll wait.
Right. I would rather sit on hold and know that I'm in a queue than
Yep.
leave a voicemail and wonder, is anyone going to check the voicemail?
And, you know, and I get it. In some cases, chat's probably more efficient, but I know in some cases over the phone is more efficient too. You know?
And if they want to offer a chat only option at a discount, fine,
Sure.
right? But we're paying for premium. We should get the premium.
Or just be honest. Hey, we're not answering the phone anymore. We're going to get rid of the phone line.
Right, right.
You want to contact us? It's over chat. Okay. Well, then at least I don't have any false hope.
Right.
Just be honest.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I've never left a message because who leaves voicemails anymore? Really?
Oh, my mother-in-law. That's who leaves. Everybody. I assume everybody's mother-in-law, right? That's
Okay.
who leaves
And
voicemails.
and my dad.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm not going to listen to. Thank God, Google Voice transcribes it for me automatically, and I can get the sense of what it is. We even have customers to get away from SDS2 speak. We get the customers who do not understand the sending of an email is a much more useful way to ask me a question than to call me, right? I have none of the resources, right? If you're calling me with a question that I can answer without looking at the drawings, then yeah, absolutely, I will call me, right? But when you're emailing me or when you're calling me and the first thing I have to do is do research into the problem, just tell me what the problem is and I'll get back to you.
And for that, I prefer a written record anyway, because if they call you up and say, hey, how long is this beam supposed to be? And you tell them, all right, it's supposed to be 5'3", and then they cut it to 6'4", and then they gripe, hey, this thing didn't fit. I called you and asked you. You said 6'4". I made it 6'4". I don't remember saying that. But if you have it, a written record, they asked you what to do. You responded. It's all there in black and white. Now, Nick, you'll always say, you know what? They're just going to do whatever. But for me to know I was right, at least I'm not angry at myself.
Maybe that
because
right
they
now,
were convinced that
the
I
entire
have messed up.
SDS2 support department that has watched the video is going, you fucking hypocrites, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
You just
I was just thinking that.
spent 10 minutes telling us that we should answer the phone, and you're telling us how a phone call is useless to you, and that you
I
need
was
to
just
be prepared
thinking
for the
that.
conversation.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I say just be honest, because I'll be honest with other customers too. Don't call me. I have a phone number. I don't want you to know it because you're going to call me and I'm going to ignore you because I'm working on your job. Send me an email. And when I go to lunch, I'll look at all of the emails and answer them all. And if I have any time left, maybe I'll eat something.
Right. It's the nature
But
of
if
the
I
question.
get
That's
interrupted
what's-
100 times in the morning, I'm not going to produce anything
right.
in the day.
A support representative should be able to answer the question that you're asking them without further reference in general, right?
Right.
Whereas
A lot of the questions, yeah.
anytime a customer will call and be like, "Oh, I made these markups. Can you look at them?" Yeah, send me them. I'm sending them now. Okay, why didn't you send them first? Let me study them. I'll respond with further because this is I need to draw things. You can't see what I'm drawing.
Okay, Danny says, we're not being paid for support. We're being paid to prove we were right. Yes. That's my whole job, is to constantly prove I'm right. And if the checker says anything about it, I have to prove I'm right and he's an idiot.
Yeah,
that reminds me of the
That's our
project
whole
manager.
job, is prove we're right. That's it.
the project manager's what?
That reminds me of the project manager I used to have that I told you about like last week. Yeah, he'd send an email, immediately get up from his office, come out to my office. Hey, I just sent you an email. Did you read it yet?
Yeah.
Dude, it hasn't even hit my inbox yet. It's literally downloading.
It's still in the tubes.
Come on, man.
Our old checker used to use a calculator to check everything with trig, right? And so we would have this complicated layout with radii and 3 different grid systems, and we'd walk over and sit by his desk, and he'd be like, "Oh, so this sine, cosine, this 12, right?" Rattle off a bunch of numbers and be like, "You're off by 2 inches," and expect me to have a rebuttal. And I'm like, maybe I don't know what you just did wrong.
And you respond with rounding error?
Right. I don't know. Like,
my software is accurate to 4 decimal places of a degree. Double check your work.
Right. Yeah. Do it again.
I'm going to trust that.
Did you try rebooting your calculator? Because that might be the answer to what we're coming with. He also had an RPN calculator, and somebody in the audience, the 12 people watching ever, has heard those letters and just groaned, right? Because they know what RPN means. It's a calculator backwards, right? You do 12, enter 5 plus.
Plus.
Do 12, 5. To do
12 plus 5. Yep. The operation is entered in after the number.
Oh.
Yeah. And
so it's 12 exists. 5, add it. Okay. Just moving on that way.
Wow.
Yeah, and he would hand you this calculator with this smirk on his face, as if his calculator isn't the problem here.
Yep.
Right? Well, this is old, therefore it must be better. And it's like, I don't think so, right? I don't think so. That's not how this goes. But
I see what happened here. You're using this inside-out calculator.
We got to wrap up here. Any final thoughts from anybody? Join the Discord. That's my final thought.
Join the Discord, absolutely.
We're going to drag you kicking and screaming into a community. Don't just join the Discord and then never, say anything on it. Actually contribute to conversation. Ask, even if it's just a question or asking for something from us. Do it, right? Just join the community. We'll see you out there, and hopefully we'll see you here next time on the Steel Forum. Oh, that's